Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Tales of Herding God Part 270 to 272 based on novel. So let's start. Deus sneered and said, "Look at his appearance, he looks somewhat similar to Founding Emperor. He should be the descendant of Founding Emperor, right? You still deny he is your disciple. Big heavenly teacher, don't lie to me." Saint Woodcutter's face turned red. "That's right, he is my second disciple. However, that's just an honorary title, and I didn't teach him anything." Suddenly, the power of the five thunder pot burst forth, to blow Qin Mu away, yet runes swirled around Qin Mu to teleport him back in an instant. He still laid on the back of the disaster god to hug the head on the disaster god to gnaw on. He was fast and ruthless. Teleportation divine art, that's a divine art that you founded. Deus was even more suspicious and sneered. Saint Woodcutter was ashamed and speechless. Suddenly, the disaster god in the sky above surging river noticed that side, and the disaster god, who didn't care about anyone, was astonished. He completely forgot about getting Qin Mu down and hurriedly bowed. "Big senior sister." Deus nodded her head and said, "You are the disciple of North Deity. You still recognize me as your big senior sister." The disaster god's head was full of blood, and he stood there helplessly. "I met Big Senior Sister once, but Big Senior Sister held a high position, so you probably didn't notice me. I've come to descend a calamity on order, may Big Senior Sister pardon me." Deus said indifferently, "Leave a little something behind and go back. I'm here so you can't descend any calamity. Leave something behind, so you can go back to explain yourself. Tell Master that I'm here, either he can send you guys to death, or he can come personally." The expression of that disaster changed drastically. He gritted his teeth and severed his left arm. He descended from the sky and placed his arm respectfully in front of Deus. He moved back 3 steps, and his primordial spirit left his body. His body turned back into a stone statue. Qin Mu chewed twice on the head of the stone statue, and his teeth almost shattered. He could only give up and slip down from the stone statue. Looking around, his eyes glinted with malice, as though he was a fierce beast choosing his prey. The stone statue gradually sunk into the ground and vanished without a trace. The 5 thunder pot also swirled furiously to swallow the thunderclouds in the sky back into the pot, and vanished right afterward. "This big beauty is the most delicious." Qin Mu pounced overexcitedly at Deus. Saint Woodcutter was ashamed and unable to show his old face. How he wished he could make a coffin and bury himself underground at that very instant. Deus' right hand formed a mudra, and her fingers moved quickly. Her hand was like a lotus flower, which gently tapped on the heart of Qin Mu's brows. The devil nature in Qin Mu's body instantly vanished, and the Yudu devil chi flooded furiously back into the Qin word land in the heart of his brows. The mudra of Deus rushed over with the Yudu devil chi and devil nature into big baby Qin Fengqing's body. The seal of Mingju Jade Mirror was instantly broken. Heaven Duke and Crimson Emperor were astonished and cried out in unison, "This girl's abilities aren't bad. It's a pity she's dead." Deus cried with astonishment and was bewildered. The magic power in her mudra instantly vanished as though something had eaten it away. She couldn't see the sight inside Qin word land, so she couldn't see Heaven Duke and Crimson Emperor. "The heart of your brows is strange. Let me take a look inside your third eye." She was about to fly into the heart of Qin Mu's brows when Saint Woodcutter, first ancestor human emperor, Fu Riluo, and Kai Shi hurriedly stopped her. "You mustn't. Don't scout the heart of his brows, we have all suffered greatly before." Saint Woodcutter said, "Even though I have never suffered before, I also know that that place is incomparably dangerous, and it's best that Heavenly King not try it." Deus' gaze flickered, and she said with a smile, "It's really that dangerous? Even stronger than my abilities on Emperor's throne. Oh well, my corporeal body is still dead, so I shall not take a look then." Qin Mu woke up and immediately pasted the willow leaf on the heart of his brows. He sighed in relief. "Teacher, first ancestor, you guys have all came back to life." He was surprised and delighted. When he saw Deue, he immediately tidied up his clothes and took out a mirror to groom himself before greeting. "Teacher, who is this fairy sister?" "Fairy sister." Deue was overjoyed, and all her negative impressions of Qin Mu vanished without a trace. "Heavenly teacher, your second disciple's judgment is not bad. He's much better than founding emperor and you, he is a talent. You were right to take in this disciple." Saint Woodcutter put his heart down and whispered to Qin Mu, "Wipe your mouth, there's still blood at the corners." "Blood at the corners of my mouth?" Qin Mu's heart was astonished. He hurriedly took out a small mirror, and wiped away the bloodstains on the corner of his mouth. He then took out a strand of hair from the gap of his teeth and the youth was stunned. "I've vomited blood." "And how come there's hair as well?" Deue said, "That's my junior brother's blood and hair. He is the disaster god, whose head you have been hugging and gnawing on earlier." Qin Mu's face blushed. Deue said with a smile, "What a pure and innocent boy, there aren't many boys that know embarrassment. You are so shy, many girls must like you." Woodcutter, Fu Riluo, Kai Shi, and First Ancestor had weird expressions and coughed repeatedly. They didn't speak. Deue paid no attention and said with a smile, "Little brother." "Aya, I can't call you little brother. You are the disciple of Big Heavenly Teacher, and also the descendant of Founding Emperor. If I call you little brother, won't my seniority be lower than them?" Qin Mu said, "Big sister, let us just make our own friends, wouldn't that be fine?" Deu's heart bloomed with joy, and she praised, "This is a good idea. From today onwards, we shall be brother and sister, but we shall have separate relationships with other people." Qin Mu examined Deu's forehead, and saw a hole in her forehead, which he could see through. He could even see the brain tissue. Furthermore, Deu's heart had also stopped, and her blood no longer flowed. It was obvious that she was a corpse. It was just her primordial spirit was too strong, so she could still control the body and make it seem like she was still living. "Sister's injury is very severe." Qin Mu said, "How did you suffer such a severe injury?" Deue replied sorrowfully, "I met the wrong person. Sister married a heartless rat, and got injured by him." "This isn't an injury. How can a dead person be injured?" Qin Mu examined her injury in detail, and even when he was close, he couldn't hear Deu's breathing. Deu's wound still had some divine art remaining, and the power of the divine art was extremely strong, so he didn't dare to touch. "It's an injury, you can still be saved. Even though it's severe, it's not very serious." Qin Mu examined the wound and moved to the back of Deu's head and observed. He said, "It's just that this remnant left behind by the wound, I can't deal with it. Could sister clean up the wound?" Deu was astonished and executed her technique to remove the remnant of Son of Heaven Yin's divine art. She asked curiously, "I'm on Emperor's throne realm and you are only on Celestial Being realm. What methods do you have to treat the injuries of an Emperor's throne?" Qin Mu's body trembled, and he revealed a three-headed and six-armed form. Raising his hand, he severed his left head down from his neck with a sword light. Deu was shocked, and Qin Mu just smiled as he raised his left head. "Big sister, please take a look." His neck shook, and another head actually grew out. Deu stared with her eyes wide open and cried out, "There's actually such a technique." She could see that Qin Mu had not only chopped off the head on his corporeal body, but he had also chopped off the head on his primordial spirit. After executing his technique, Not only did Qin Mu grow a head on his corporeal body, he similarly grew a head on his primordial spirit. She had never heard of that kind of technique before. God Kai, she snorted and felt pretty annoyed. What Qin Mu had executed was Light Emperor's Anusrava creation, mysterious technique, and Crimson Emperor's 3 primordial spirit undying God consciousness. By combining those 2 techniques perfectly, only then was he able to gain the effect of an undying corporeal body and an undying primordial spirit. An undying corporeal body was also what Crimson Light Son of God wished for, but never did he expect Qin Mu to accomplish it before Crimson Light Son of God. Of course, for Qin Mu to be able to achieve that step was something they couldn't be envious of. Crimson Light Son of God had taught Qin Mu's Light Emperor's Anusrava creation, mysterious technique, and in addition to Crimson Emperor's consciousness directly teaching 3 primordial spirit undying God consciousness to him, it allowed Qin Mu to have the same attainments as Crimson Emperor did in undying God consciousness. With that kind of attainment, it would be much easier for Qin Mu to comprehend Anusrava creation mysterious technique. Therefore, Qin Mu's attainments in those 2 Emperor's Throne techniques surpassed Crimson Light Son of God. He had an advantage that couldn't be compared. Even if he had imparted Crimson Emperor's technique to Crimson Light Son of God, Crimson Light Son of God couldn't have attainments like Crimson Emperor, which was the reason why Crimson Light Son of God still couldn't attain an undying corporeal body, an undying primordial spirit. On the contrary, the outsider Qin Mu had achieved it first instead. Saint Woodcutter revealed a smile. He knew Qin Mu's foundation, so he knew how terrifying Qin Mu's attainments in creation was. Qin Mu didn't even know how strong he was, but he knew it very clearly. Receiving inheritance of Crimson Emperor and Light Emperor, he could be said to be the strongest practitioner in the art of creation without a doubt. Qin Mu brought the 2 great Emperor's Throne techniques back from Crimson Light Floating World and passed them down to all academies in Eternal Peace. Tens of thousands of scholars of Eternal Peace studied the marvel diligently, and there was no lack of people with outstanding talent, who could comprehend numerous bits and pieces of the 2 Emperor's Throne techniques. Other than Woodcutter, literally no one else knew that Qin Mu had long stepped on the summit of the mountains. Qin Mu scattered his 3 heads and 6 arms with a smile. Big Sister's injury may be hard to treat for other people, but to me, it isn't too hard. Does Big Sister have any research into the art of creation? Deur shook her head and said, rough study, but not many attainments. I'm inferior to Big Heavenly Teacher. The Big Heavenly Teacher that she said was Saint Woodcutter. Qin Mu walked here and there and said, Big Sister's corporeal body is already dead, and you have probably been dead for a very long time. However, it's preserved quite well and looks like it has just died. Yet the longer you walk on this world, the easier it will be for your body to decompose. If it really decomposes, you will be truly dead. In that case, he raised his head to say with a smile, let me use creation technique to treat you. When you revive, you can slowly comprehend the art of creation. Deur was astonished and said, you can really treat the corporeal body of a strong practitioner on Emperor's throne. I'm on Emperor's throne realm. Qin Mu was full of confidence. Healers treat patients like their children. Pa, you just want to take advantage of Big Sister. Deur rolled her eyes at him, but she didn't look angry at all. Woodcutter, Furiluo, and the rest looked at one another in dismay. First Ancestor Human Emperor asked with a low voice, Heavenly Teacher, did he learn how to coax girls from you? Saint Woodcutter had a blank expression. How would I know this? If I knew, would I be single until now? I'm ashamed to even say this, but I didn't even teach him a single divine art. He has other teachers. On the observatory, the corpse of Apothecary had already turned stiff. Qin Mu calculated to see how he could design an accurate creation, divine art to help him treat Deur injury and not harm her brain. Saint Woodcutter walked up to the observatory of Surging River Academy, and he prepared to cast his spell. He wanted to help the people of Lishu get their souls back. If we let the people of Lishu have their souls gone for too long, it will harm their bodies. I should guide their souls and primordial spirits back. First ancestor Human Emperor revealed an anxious look and warned, if we seize souls from Yudu and return the dead back to life, we will have to lose our lifespan. Even though Heavenly Teacher is a god with endless lifespan, if you anger the messenger of death, he will lay his hands on you and take your soul away. If you can't escape this disaster, you will have to suffer down in Yudu, and your heavy crimes might even get you eaten by Earth Count. Even if you escape from this trouble, you will still have to suffer when you go down to Yudu after you die and get eaten by Earth Count. Lishu is so huge. There are so many people, so your punishment will definitely be even more severe. Saint Woodcutter said, my plan was to use the lives of these people in Lishu as bait to bait Lu Yunxiu, and the rest to come forward before using Qin Mu to lure out Son of Heaven Yin. As a result, I've caused these people to lose their lives. This is all on me, so how could I protect myself by not saving them? We will talk about the consequences after my death. He also had quite some study on Yudu language and Yudu spells. Soul Guide wasn't too difficult. Yudu language came from his mouth, and a gate slowly materialized from emptiness to reality. It gradually appeared. He didn't manage to create Gate of Heaven influence like Qin Mu, and he also couldn't cultivate divine arts like God Execution Mysterious Gate. However, he had other methods and used runes to construct another gate that connected to Yudu. That kind of method was similar to the primitive Soul Guide and different from the Soul Guide that Qin Mu had improved. The Soul Guide improved by Qin Mu was extremely direct. Gate of Heaven influence would appear straight after executing the spell, and he could easily summon the souls of the dead back from Yudu. Saint Woodcutter required more effort and more magic power to execute Soul Guide, however, the effect was almost the same. He stood on the observatory, and Yudu Devil Chi rolled out behind him. The darkness became thicker and thicker. It was daytime, and even if the sun was shining intensely, the sunlight couldn't shine through the invasion of the Yudu Devil Chi. In the Devil Chi, a gate stood upright, and souls continued to fly out before flying off in different directions. Once they found their own corporeal body, they would slip right in, and after a moment, the owner of the body would slowly wake up. Saint Woodcutter cast his spell to increase the area where Yudu Devil Chi was covering. The Devil Chi spread out in Surging River Academy, and covered the Surging River, before reaching Dyke River County. It then went from Dyke River County to the other few counties. From that gate, more and more souls flew out, and more people woke up. At that moment, a faint glow appeared in the darkness, and one small boat was floating over in the darkness. It floated over to the gate. The messenger of death is here, he's probably here to detain my soul. Saint Woodcutter's heart felt sorrow, but his face was very calm. He thought to himself, as long as I don't implicate anyone else, that's good enough. To exchange my life for the lives of the people in Lishu, it's worth it even if I die. Also, severely injuring Son of Heaven Yin, saving Deua, stopping the natural disaster from descending, everything is worth it. I have 3 disciples and they are all very fine. Without me, they can still walk on. The sorrow in his heart vanished, and he waited for his final fate. The small boat sailed to the gate in the darkness, and the elder on the boat rose. He took down the lantern and shone it at Saint Woodcutter. Saint Woodcutter's primordial spirit became unstable by the light from the lantern, but he was still chanting the Yudu language from his mouth. He didn't dare to slacken off, and could only hope that he could summon the souls of all the people that had wrongly died in Lishu before the messenger of death could make his move. The small boat sailed out of the gate. An elder messenger of death walked in the world of the living from Yudu. Saint Woodcutter was astonished and temporarily stopped his spell. Lord Official Sovereign of Yudu, could you give me some time and let me complete my wish? Elder Messenger of Death was about to say something when Qin Mu suddenly popped his head into the door and got gladly surprised when he saw him. So it's Official Sovereign. Elder Messenger of Death's face turned black, and he said, I thought it was you who was summoning the souls, so I planned to come here and take a look. In the end, it wasn't you, so I thought that the person who dared to summon the souls had quite the guts. There are quite a number of people summoning souls these 2 days, and Yudu is in chaos. Earth Count isn't happy. Qin Mu said with a smile, Official Sovereign, please pardon me. I was the one who had got them to summon the souls. Official Sovereign didn't do anything to them, right? Elder Messenger of Death's face turned dark, and he snorted. Qin Mu hurriedly said, the one summoning souls this time is my teacher. I'm currently too busy to summon the souls, so he's in charge of it. He doesn't know anything, so he's just messing around. Please forgive him if he alarmed Official Sovereign. Why don't I summon the souls personally? Elder Messenger of Death was solemn for a moment, and his tone was stiff. No need, even though the seal is very sturdy, we still have to proceed with caution. This is to prevent feeding your brother with the souls you summon. Qin Mu said with a smile, don't worry, Official Sovereign. The willow leaf on the heart of my brows is stuck there firmly and never taken down. My brother can't run out. Elder Messenger of Death was softened and instructed, it's best if you never take it down. If you let your older brother out, Earth Count will still have to be the one to clean your ass. I won't be pursuing this incident of summoning the soul. Yudu has a rule that the first 7 days of a dead person still doesn't consider one to be dead, and they can still come back to life. Therefore, it isn't Yudu that's afraid of you, nor is it me that's giving you face. There's really such a rule. You have to be careful. Qin Mu acknowledged and said, take care. Elder Messenger of Death boarded the small boat to return to Yudu, and vanished into the darkness. Qin Mu then scamped back, and left the dumbfounded Saint Woodcutter hanging on the observatory. He didn't come back to his senses after a long time. Dao brother, I really envy you having such an outstanding disciple. He is even so sought after in Yudu. Fu Riluo sighed ruefully, and was full of envy. How did you groom him to be so outstanding? Can you teach me as well? God Kai she eavesdropped at the side and didn't dare to miss out a word. Saint Woodcutter opened his mouth. But he couldn't continue his sentence. This guy, he has the reputation of a saint and yet is still hiding secrets from us. Kai Shi's felt his anger rising. He didn't have a good impression of Saint Woodcutter, and it was even worse after that. Saint Woodcutter couldn't explain, so he could only continue to summon the souls. He thought to himself heavily, what have I taught him before? How do I not know? Qin Mu ran back to Deu's side, and she also looked curiously at him. She asked him quietly, you know benevolent saintly king equal to heaven? Qin Mu focused on designing the runes and didn't even raise his head. I know him. We have come into contact a few times, and he is an old man that's very easy to talk to. Deus stared with her eyes wide open, and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He's easy to talk to. Do you know that benevolent saintly king equal to heaven is the number 2 person in Yudu? He's an existence that's merely below Earth Count. If he is easy to talk to, wouldn't those gods that he had killed and hooked their souls be crying their way back to life? As long as Yudu's rules are touched, he won't stop at anything even if it means destroying an entire world. Qin Mu took out the creation runes he had designed and tested it. He shook his head and said, it must be rumors. Official Sovereign is a good old man, and he never blew his temper. Big sister, stop moving. I'm going to cast a spell and treat your injury. Deus stood properly and stopped moving. Qin Mu wanted to make his move, but he felt inconvenient, so he could only say, Big sister, you are too tall, you should lie down so it will be easier for me. Dieu laid down according to his words and floated in the sky. She was still 5 feet from the ground. Her beautiful hair flowed down like a waterfall and had a drape effect. The black clothes on her body also hung down like soft silk, and Qin Mu took a glance at her breasts that were still perky even when she was lying down. He exclaimed in admiration to himself, "Big sister is really beautiful." Even though the innocent youth also looked at the faces, because of the teachings from the elders ever since he was young, they were insistent that he should not only look at the face, he also had to look at the breasts. Girls with big breasts were the beautiful ones. He executed his spell after calming himself down. There were not many runes that were needed to repair the wound on Deu's head, and he just needed the creation runes from 3 primordial spirit undying God consciousness, and Anusrava creation mysterious scripture that were targeted at the forehead and the brain. However, the most crucial points were still how to reconstruct, and how not to let the other brain tissues grow. The reason why Qin Mu had to calculate so long was because of that. Other than that, he also needed to edit some creation runes and rearrange the structures. It was the first time for him, so he had to be careful. After all, the brain was a very fragile area. It wasn't good to have less, and it wasn't good to have more. Furthermore, Deu didn't just have a wound on her corporeal body, but she also had such a hole in her primordial spirit. The reason why Qin Mu has redesigned the runes was to treat the wound on her primordial spirit as well. He cast the spell carefully, and saw the brain tissues on the back of Deu's brain gradually growing back. The missing portion was slowly growing back to fill up the bloody hole. Every action from Qin Mu was extremely careful. Layers of formations appeared in his pupils, and he stared at the bloody hole in Deu's forehead. He examined the growth of the brain tissues in detail. He controlled his magic power and transformed the runes to be even more detailed. When the brain tissue was completely grown out, he then carefully changed the runes to grow the bone where her wound was. When the bone grew out, Qin Mu changed the runes again, and that time, it was to fix the skin on her forehead. "Mua, us apothecaries are going to be out of a job," Apothecary's voice rang out. Qin Mu's last rune flickered, and the rune finally dispersed. Deu touched her forehead and was truly astonished. She said with a smile, "Great wizard is truly doing the work of gods with your art of creation." Qin Mu said with a smile, "Big sister, turn over. There's still a hole behind your head that isn't fixed yet. Slowly, be careful of your brains spilling out." Grandpa Apothecary, the art of creation can't replace the art of healing, and it also can't replace the apothecaries. After treating the back of Deu's head, he said, "The art of creation is something that's hard to be skilled in. It isn't impossible to cultivate to my level. With aptitude as outstanding as mine, one just needs to spend tens of thousands of years of cultivating diligently, and they might be able to do the same." Even though others didn't know the difficulty of the art of creation, he knew it very well. His attainments in the art of creation were mainly from Crimson Emperor's consciousness. If he hadn't received Crimson Emperor's consciousness, it was unknown how long he would need to comprehend to reach his current standard. Furthermore, the human body is a big system, and the corporeal body of gods is a small world. Art of creation can repair the body, but to maintain the balance of the human body system and the corporeal body world of gods, that would have to rely on the apothecaries. Qin Mu dispersed his runes and took out a small mirror to pass to Deu. "Big sister, take a look, is it the same as it was in the past?" Part 271. Deu looked at her reflection in the mirror over and over again. She couldn't help bursting with joy and praised him, "You are truly a great wizard, the one with sacred hands. I can't see any flaw at all." "Wait a moment." Qin Mu immediately stopped her and said, "Don't move. When Big Sister smiles, there's a slight wrinkle at the corner of your eyes. Let me smooth it out for you." Deur immediately stopped moving. Qin Mu went forward, and small runes burst forth from his fingers to activate the skin at the corners of her eyes, smoothing out her wrinkles. That made the skin at the corners of her phoenix eyes looked very white and tender. Deur blinked her eyes and raised her mirror a few more times. She smiled at the mirror and realized her small wrinkles had indeed vanished. She was delighted. Qin Mu praised, "Sister is really pretty." Deur was beyond elated and was even a little shy. The one who sells fake medicine, it's not the apothecaries that are losing their jobs. Def came to Apothecary's side, and he twitched his ears. It's you that is going to lose your job. You can only sell fake medicine from now on. You can't rely on your face to make a living anymore. Apothecary sighed, and he smiled bitterly. The disciple is taught well, but the master is going to starve to death. Mua is going to be number one in the world. Luckily this young fellow is muddle-headed and isn't passionate about love, otherwise, how many love affairs would he have created with that mouth of his? Def said calmly, "We taught him well. His mouth has to be sweet, but all women are vixens. This brat still remembers what we said, therefore even though he is very sweet to every woman he meets, he also put his guard up against them. Therefore, he wouldn't follow you in your steps." Apothecary adjusted the bronze mask on his face and said with a low voice, "Mua is not young anymore. If we teach him like this, would we delay the major turning point of the brat's life? What if he puts his guard up against every woman and doesn't dare progress further with them? What should we do?" Def stopped speaking. Apothecary asked again, and Def still didn't say a thing. Apothecary laughed from anger. "Your ears have already grown out, so stop acting deaf. I'm asking you, quickly think of an idea, or I'll poison you to death." Def was helpless and said, "I also don't know. Back then, I taught him a gentleman should always describe a woman as sweet, fair, and graceful, while you guys taught him that every woman is a vixen. The holy book didn't say what I should do when encountering such a situation. Why don't you prescribe some medicine to put him in heat?" Apothecary said proudly, "As my disciple, he still needs to rely on medicine to be in heat. Won't that throw the face of Jade Face Poison King? Furthermore, his medical expertise is not inferior to mine, and he can undo any drug I put on him. If I knew this would happen, I would have held back." The commoners of Liz who woke up, and they were all in a daze. They didn't know what happened during the night, and just treated it as they had fallen asleep. Some divine arts practitioners could guess something huge must have happened, but they couldn't guess what it was exactly. However, many strange incidents still happened in the countryside. Someone woke up, and her nature changed drastically, claiming that she wasn't a woman. It was a man from a certain place that had woke up and realized he had turned into a woman. The divine arts practitioners of the countryside asked the person where he stayed and who was in his family, all which he could answer. When they went over to check the place he had claimed, there was truly such a person, and that person was claiming that he wasn't a man. He said he was a woman that had entered the wrong body. There were thousands of such incidents, and it created quite an uproar. The souls have most likely entered the wrong body when they were called back. Qin Mu heard the rumors and guessed, Teacher's soul guide still isn't there yet. As a result, when sending the souls back into their body, there were slight mistakes made. This should be because you don't completely under the Yudu language. Saint Woodcutter retorted with a black face, "If you are so capable, why didn't you do it?" Qin Mu said honestly, "I thought Teacher could do it, but never did I expect Teacher to be slightly lacking." If you completely understand the accurate meaning and mood of the Yudu language, the paths, skills, and divine arts will become clear to you without any explanation. In that way, there will be no mistakes. Woodcutter was speechless from anger as he choked on his words. Apothecary and Def were immensely pleased. Def praised, "Mua is humble and polite, as expected of the child we have raised painstakingly. He's too humble, he says the saint is only slightly inferior to him, but it's actually this much. He spread his arms wide open. Apothecary was also slightly pleased. This is all thanks to our teachings. Ever since he was young, we have taught him that there will always be others that are above him, so he has to be humble and careful. Even if he meets people that are inferior to him, he should always say you are only slightly inferior. This is why Mua still hasn't been beaten to death up until now. The two elders revealed gratified smiles. To solve this problem, we will have to swap the souls. Qin Mu said, it's just that there are thousands of such cases, and they are all living in different parts of Lizhu. It will take a long time to find all of them. He was terrified of troublesome matters. Saint Woodcutter said, regarding swapping of souls, leave it to those scholars that cultivated Soul Guide, we don't have to do it personally. You have already ordered those scholars to head to Yuji County, just get them to hurry back. Qin Mu nodded his head, and projected his primordial spirit out to contact Sai Yinxiang. Sai Yinxiang had a look of fatigue on her face, and she said, Cult Master, you let us head to Yuji County to pull the souls of the people of Yuji back. Everything was still fine, but afterward, something happened. When the scholars were executing Soul Guide, small boats suddenly appeared, and light came shining in from the darkness. With a shine, the scholars would lose their souls and turn into corpses. Qin Mu was astonished. This is official sovereign making a move. Sai Yinxiang continued to say, Heavenly King, you said it's because we summoned too many souls back and touched the rules of Yudu. So the messenger of death made a move to take the souls of the offenders away. Yet not long ago, the souls of the scholars suddenly came back, and some of them said it was son of Yudu, who had pleaded with the messenger of death to let them back. I'm not sure if that's real or fake. Qin Mu had a blank expression on his face. I didn't plead with official sovereign, what's going on? Anyway, it's good that the scholars are back. This saves me the trouble of returning to Yudu. I have the feeling that Yudu doesn't really welcome me. Every time I go there, official sovereign and Earth Count don't give me a good look. They always look like they want me to scram. He explained the reason and said, Saint Asyong, bring 100 capable scholars to Lizhu, help the people whose souls have wrongly entered the bodies to return into their own bodies. Don't create any more trouble. Sai Yinxiang agreed and immediately summoned the scholars to hurry to Lizhu. Qin Mu bade farewell to Apothecary and Deaf. He followed Saint Woodcutter, first ancestor, and Dieur to the capital city to meet the other disciple of Woodcutter, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. Qin Mu had originally not planned to go, but Dieur wanted him to tag along. Heavenly King, we can slowly walk and take a look at the local customs and conditions of eternal peace. Woodcutter suggested, the reform of eternal peace is not just words, they are true actions that are being taken. What you see on the way will definitely change your view. Deur said indifferently, you are the heavenly teacher of founding emperor era, and you have been in charge of founding emperor's reform. In just a short 20,000 years, you managed to push founding emperor era to the extent that the extraterritorial celestial heavens had no choice but to wipe it out. Are you going to join this eternal peace's reform again? How many years do you want to use to push eternal peace to the extent that founding emperor era could no longer tolerate it? When Saint Woodcutter heard her mention founding emperor era, his face dimmed, and he said bitterly, I indeed directed founding emperor's reform, but I didn't interfere with eternal peace's reform. The people truly directing the reform are my 3 disciples. He straightened up one finger and said, my big disciple passed down the philosophy that the path of the saint is none other than the everyday use of the common people. Everyone chatted as they walked. Deur was also observing the lives of the people she saw on the way. Woodcutter raised his second finger and said, my 3rd disciple used that sentence for eternal peace, which is why eternal peace looks like it does today. I taught my big disciple for 100 years, and I only taught my third disciple for 2 years. As for eternal peace's reform, I haven't interfered in anything. I'm just running errands for my third disciple. Yue took a glance at Qin Mu, and he said with a smile, "You said that the ones directing the reform are your 3 disciples, but you only say your big disciple and little disciple, and have not talked about your second disciple." Saint Woodcutter looked at Qin Mu and felt his head was about to explode. He shook his head and said, "My second disciple, I've not taught for even a day. I've no idea what had happened. I just had such a disciple out of the blue." Yue asked curiously, what had he done? Saint Woodcutter wanted to rouse his spirit, but he couldn't, so he just said listlessly, "He is the man behind my third disciple." Yue was puzzled. Saint Woodcutter said weakly, "When Eternal Peace Empire and my third disciple were at their most dangerous period, he was the one that had supported him fully, and only then was Eternal Peace Empire saved. He protected the Emperor and my third disciple. When Eternal Peace Empire was in danger again, he was the one who protected them again. When danger fell again. Big Heavenly Teacher, stop, I understand." Yue didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "It must be him who protected Eternal Peace Empire and your third disciple, am I right? I really don't understand this disciple of mine." Saint Woodcutter had a weird expression and examined Qin Mu secretly. He said in a low voice, "He truly can't be comprehended. I have never seen such a weird nature. He has the boldness to reform, and he has a great ambition and belief that can't be erased. Furthermore, he is also clever and eccentric. He is curious about everything like a silly roe deer. Yet," he gave some thought before continuing, "yet he has a strange charm, and when he's focused, he could research numerous strange and weird things. He could actually run to Heavenly Yin world alone and revive Goddess of Heavenly Yin, creating a spell that could allow shattered souls to gather back together to reconstruct the soul and revive the dead. He also created Primordial Spirit Guide in 6 Directions Realm, allowing 6 Directions Realm to cultivate Primordial Spirit and change the cultivation system that had been passed down for hundreds of thousands of years. He even created the 18th sword form, without thinking of it, and pushed the sword skill a huge step forward. He seems to have no limits or rules in comprehending the paths, skills, and divine arts. What others couldn't think of, he can usually think of it. What others thought couldn't be done, he could do. Even the spirit energy mutual shift bridge that connected 2 worlds together was made by this brat unintentionally, solving the problem of the world barrier. Furthermore, he is never stingy. Whatever he learns and whatever he comprehends, he spreads it throughout the entire empire, and he never keeps it for himself. It's hard to get an Emperor's Throne technique, right? The extraterritorial celestial heavens spend so much effort to collect Emperor's Throne technique, yet he just passed down 3 Emperor's Throne techniques he received. One who is clearly an enemy would be won over by him and become his friend. One who is clearly a friend would be so maddened by him that they want nothing more but to beat his ass. Saint Woodcutter sighed and said, "When I thought he was a perfect person, I found all kinds of flaws on his body. One is that he isn't focused, and he always likes to research this and research that. After founding Primordial Spirit Guide, he ran off to do something else. He founded the 18th sword form, and ran away, without taking the momentum, to research the 19th sword form. This made people want to hold a sword to his neck so badly, so we could force him to research on one thing. The second problem is him being too daring. He is so daring that he seems a little silly. He dares to do any dangerous thing. This incident in Lizhu was clearly a bait, yet he still ran over stupidly. The third is his arrogant. You may see he is humble, but he isn't humble at all, he is very arrogant. Heaven is number 1, and I'm number 2. Earth count is number 1, and I'm number 2. The Emperor is number 1, and I'm number 2. The Celestial Emperor is number 1, and I'm number 2. Saint Woodcutter's brows were all scrunched up, and he sighed. I don't understand him. I really don't understand him. Deur looked at Qin Mu, who was currently refining pills for the dragon Qilin. After feeding the dragon Qilin, he ran to see the wind carriage, and discussed with the scholars of the countryside to see if there was any shortcut to improving it. Truly an interesting person. Deur said with a smile. He lives more freely and happier than anyone else. No. Saint Woodcutter shook his head. Actually, the responsibility on him is too heavy. He is just very optimistic, which makes people feel he is living free and happy. Yet, only he knows his own pain. He just chose to face life with a positive attitude, to face the dangers. He couldn't choose his birth, but he could choose the path for his future, as well as his attitude in walking on this path. He is the most charming person I've ever met. Deur looked at Qin Mu once more, but she still couldn't see any pain from Qin Mu's body. She could only see an outgoing boy laughing with several scholars. He's indeed a boy with a strange charm. Deur nodded her head. He's not that handsome, but he's full of charm. We don't actually have to meet Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. Just this disciple of Big Heavenly Teacher is enough for me to help Eternal Peace Empire tide over this calamity. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor has another kind of charm. Saint Woodcutter revealed a smile. When you see him, you will understand where his charm is coming from. Actually, meeting Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor and Qin Mu, it suddenly reminds me of those extraordinary days when Founding Emperor era was just rising. I, Founding Emperor, and those comrades met in the dead ruins of High Emperor. That time, the civilization of High Emperor had been completely eradicated, and we were the people struggling to survive in the ruins. He sank back into his recollection, and his temperament was very calm. He smirked and said, "Who would expect us, people who were struggling to find even the next meal, could build such a glorious Founding Emperor era?" When I met Imperial Preceptor, Qin Mu, and their other comrades, I couldn't help but recall those friends and me in the past. Deur fell into silence. After a moment, she shook her head and said, "Let's not mention the past. In that case, let's go and meet him. Mua, let us continue on our journey." First Ancestor said with a loud voice. Qin Mu acknowledged and ran back with a smile. "I would like to go to Heavenly Saint Academy in Bazhu. I have some things I have to hand to Granny Sai." Saint Woodcutter said, "We will go to Heavenly Saint Academy first." Heavenly Saint Academies was completely different from Surging River Academy. Surging River Academy was conducting all kinds of tests to use the art of creation, to grow medicinal herbs, to supply endless medicinal stones to Eternal Peace Empire. On the other hand, the academic atmosphere in Heavenly Saint Academy was even more intense. One could see all kinds of strange and rare spirit weapons flying in the sky and sprinting on the land, and sometimes, thick smoke would suddenly puff out in the sky. Something would drop down and smash a huge pit in the ground. A disheveled-looking scholar would then crawl out from the ground. Sometimes, the spirit weapons sprinting on the land would suddenly explode, and the scholar controlling the spirit weapon inside would be blasted off into the sky. Some scholars were gathering to test a formation skill. It was also extremely dangerous to change all kinds of formation skills, as formations would go out of control from time to time. Some formation skills were sword formations, and sword lights would shoot out in all directions. There were also formation skills that imitated the form of gods. When they lost control, there would be god vitality, or devil vitality, that would transform into the form of a god to chase after the operator of the formation skill. There were a bunch of apothecaries and students guarding not far away. When there were sudden accidents, they would carry away the injured in a fluster to treat them. I've told you, algebra. Algebra. An old daoist was flustered and exasperated. He shouted at the scholars that were carried away on stretchers after they failed their experiments. Your algebra must be accurate, you guys never listen. If you don't listen, you will only be the one at a disadvantage. Today, let us forge a God summoning formation. According to the Qin family spirit energy conservation runes, we can summon a monster from Yudu. On the other side, a middle-aged directorate was encouraging the scholars he was teaching and guiding them. Teacher is right here, what danger could there be? Don't worry, don't worry. According to Qin family spirit energy conservation runes, we require some sacrifice. Let us first do some algebra calculation, then we will design a sacrificial altar. Teacher, fifth senior brother is being captured by a monster. Tai. Where are you going, monster? Xiao Wu, don't worry, that was a mistake. Let us try again. Stop running and come back. You can't escape the grasp of the teacher. Deu looked around, and she exclaimed endlessly. The atmosphere in Heavenly Saint Academy made her feel a feeling she hadn't felt for a long time. She hadn't felt the feeling of improvement for a very long time. Back then, when she was studying paths, skills, and divine arts with founding emperor and the rest, only then did she have such a feeling. She liked that kind of feeling very much. When she became famous, she only became busier and busier, and she spent less and less time researching. There were still countless scholars in Heavenly Saint Academy forging all kinds of spirit weapons for their daily lives, and they had all kinds of situations happening there. When they passed by a large-scaled manufacturing factory, inside, there were scholars testing furnaces with greater firepower and relying on those furnaces to make strange spirit weapons for daily use. A scholar drove a huge mechanical beast to run past them, and he adjusted the firepower in the furnace. Suddenly 100 sword pellets rose into the sky, and sword rain filled the sky. He borrowed the mechanical beast to release his own vital qi, allowing the power of his divine art to be dozens of times stronger. That scholar was delighted and adjusted the power of the furnace again. He saw the mechanical beast spewing fire out from his legs, and but to rise into the sky. Not long later, a scream came from the sky, and that scholar crashed into a mountain with the beast. Dumbass, I've never seen such a dumb person before. A muffled voice rang out, and Saint Woodcutter looked towards the source of the sound. He saw an elder sitting on a chest, and he was holding onto a jar. His face was covered with the jar, and he was speaking to the jar, spewing out all kinds of vulgarities. His words were clearly spoken, and he scolded at a very quick speed. It looks like Grandpa Mute. Qin Mu was delighted and immediately walked forward. He shouted, Grandpa Mute, your tongue has grown back out. That elder pulled his face out from the jar and saw everyone. He immediately got up and revealed a sincere smile. He quickly signed with his hands. Arba, RRBA. Grandpa Mute said, he still hasn't grown back his tongue. He said he was lacking in manners for not seeing seniors earlier. Qin Mu helped translate Mute's sign language. Mute led them excitedly to take a tour around Heavenly Saint Academy's manufacturing factory, while he kept making hand gestures. Qin Mu just stayed at the side and helped translate. Everyone took a tour, and they exclaimed endlessly. They got up and walked out of the manufacturing factory to step out of the academy. Mute saw them off, and his face turned dark. He smashed the jar with a smack. You know too many of my secrets, therefore, I can't leave you. They entered Heavenly Saint Academy, and Heavenly Saint Academy was even more bustling on the inside. Dieu said with a sigh, I can finally understand why you are supporting Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, and Emperor Yang Feng. It's not power or strategy, it's these young people. With these lively young people, that is why you decided on supporting them. Saint Woodcutter nodded his head. We no longer have vitality and enthusiasm. We, the older generation, only have our lives and our abilities cultivated throughout our lifetime. We can use our abilities and our life to fight for some time, to let them grow. Founding Emperor hadn't fought before, but we can help Founding Emperor era fight for them until eternal peace grows. Deu was stunned, and she smiled bitterly. I had also not fought for Founding Emperor era before. Qin Mu found Granny Sai. Granny Sai was currently bringing some scholars to learn algebra, and she lowered her status to study algebra along with the other scholars, patching up what she lacked. The one teaching them algebra was Tao Master Lin Xian. Xu Xinghua and his wife were also listening at the side. Lin Xian was the Tao Master after all, and he had even established a Tao sect academy. Him coming to give a lecture was to have an exchange in learning. After giving a lecture there, he would invite the experts of Heavenly Saint Academy to teach in Tao Sect Academy, filling up what Tao Sect Academy lacked. Cult Master Qin. Everyone got up in a hurry to greet him, and Qin Mu returned their greeting. He said with a smile, "Everyone, drop the formalities. I'm merely passing by this place, so I've come to take a look. Tao Master Lin Xian, I've written a computation canon of supreme molecule. Come over and take a look, help me check it." Tao Master Lin Xian immediately took over the book, and his expression turned grim as he flipped through the first 2 pages. He asked solemnly, "Microscopic algebra?" Qin Mu nodded his head and said, "After I deduced computation canon of supreme molecule, I used this computation canon to calculate out the great Tao of heavenly fire." Tao Master Lin Xian quickly flipped through and sighed ruefully. "Cult Master Qin, how would this computation canon of supreme molecule calculate only the great Tao of heavenly fire? You have created a whole system, don't you know that? If we continued to deduce down with this computation canon, how many algebra divine arts are going to be created?" Xu Xinghua hurriedly came over, and their 2 heads collided to read computation canon of supreme molecule together. Their faces became grimmer and grimmer. It was obvious both of them had seen the importance of computation canon of supreme molecule. Every time Cult Master creates a system, he just throws it to one side. Xu Xinghua shook his head. "If you continue to deduce according to this computation canon of supreme molecule, how would you merely be a great master of a generation? You could even be called a sacred king." Qin Mu was bewildered and scratched his head. "It's so important. I just feel it's too tiring to think by myself, so wouldn't it be good if everyone deduces together?" Tao Master Lin Xian composed himself and kept computation canon of supreme molecule. He said, "Brother Xu, this is given to me by Cult Master Qin. My Tao Sect Academy still requires this to strike out our reputation and fight with the other academies. You can't steal what's mine." Xu Xinghua sneered and said, "What a coincidence. I'm also planning to establish a High Heavens Academy, and I'm lacking something to call my own." Both of them stared at each other with wide eyes. Qin Mu said, "Brother Xu, I'll just write another book for you later. There's no need to fight over this little thing. I still have an area of study here I need Heavenly Saint Academy to research. This is magnetism divine art. I would like Granny to lead some scholars with some attainments in this field to focus on this direction." Granny Sai was astonished. Magnetism divine art, which is also Earth magnetic force. Mu wants to develop this kind of divine art. Not just the Earth magnetic force. Qin Mu explained, "If it's just Earth magnetic force, it will be too simple. There are also magnetic forces between the stars in the sky. For example, when we walk on the star of crimson light, we will discover that the magnetic force is attracting us. We will have to fight against the magnetic force of the star to fly. This means that the magnetic forces between stars are also extremely strong. If we can develop that out, it might be an extremely powerful system of divine art." Granny Sai's eyes lit up, and she said, My great overarching heavenly star's force field is somewhat similar to the magnetism divine art that you mentioned. The most convenient place to research magnetism divine art is none other than the place where Supreme Emperor Heaven, Lawfu Heaven, and the Great Ruins have converged. The magnetism there is complicated, and it's the best for research. Qin Mu exclaimed to himself at how smart Granny Sai was, and he continued, "You have cultivated the magnetism divine art in great educational heavenly devil scriptures before. So you are the most suitable to research on this area." Magnetism divine art also requires quite a deep knowledge regarding algebra. Granny, how has your algebra improved over these few days? I've calculated a few magnetic force fields on the way here and wrote down a few equations. See if you can understand them first. Xu Xinghua was curious again and came up. Can Brother Mu let me take a look? Qin Mu took out a few pieces of paper, and Granny Sai looked at them for a long while as she tried to understand the meaning of the equations. She said with a smile, "I can roughly understand it, but I still require the help of some algebra experts." Xu Xinghua also understood it, and he praised, "Intricate thoughts. By using these equations of yours, we can deduce the embryonic forms of over a dozen basic runes. Even though it would be superficial, but with a direction, magnetism divine art will be able to continue to flourish. Why doesn't Brother Qin want to research it by yourself? If you continue researching this, you might just be able to add a big system of divine art into heaven and earth. The great Tao of heaven and earth will change because of you." Qin Mu sighed and said, "Where do I have that much time? I'll just learn after you guys create them." Everyone stared with their eyes wide open. That fellow had clearly found numerous paths of research, and even created the methods for research. He could clearly have quite the achievements and even become a sacred king, yet he just wasn't willing to continue researching. Instead, he threw all of the stuff he deemed minor to them to complete. "Brother Shu, is your High Heavens Academy planning to research computation, canon of supreme molecule, or magnetism divine art?" Tao Master Lin Xian chuckled and said, "You can't be possibly trying to take both paths, right? You will have to choose one." Xu Xinghua was in a dilemma. Between the two directions, computation canon of supreme molecule was slightly more important, and the achievements from continuing to research it would be even larger. On the other hand, magnetism divine art could allow him to create a magnificent system of magnetism divine arts from nothing. So even if the achievements wouldn't be as big as computation canon of supreme molecule, it would also be extraordinary. He found it difficult to choose between them. Part 272. Computation canon of supreme molecules deduction is still an empty zone, and one could deduce a high-level rule that has never been noticed. If one wants to deduce it out, they would still need a huge number of algebra experts. Magnetism divine art is much simpler. Cult Master Qin has already designed several equations for us to deduce the runes of magnetism. We just need to deduce even more complicated equations to derive the basic runes of magnetism divine arts. Once that's done, we can confirm the outline of this system of divine art. Xu Xinghua and Jing Yang discussed. "I plan to establish High Heavens Academy, but High Heavens is still not in my hands. Establishing High Heavens Academy is a must, otherwise, High Heavens will have no standing in eternal peace in the future." Jing Yang, what is your view? Jing Yang said, "Until now, West Earth still has yet to establish an academy, so why don't husbands start recruiting people from there? There are many talents in West Earth, and every family has deep roots there. If husband goes over to establish a High Heavens Academy that throws away the sectarian bias, I'm sure true Heaven Palace Master will be willing to help you. Helping you is also helping her break apart the power of the influential families in West Earth." She gave it some thought and said, "West Earth is conquered by Cult Master Qin, and all of the families in West Earth respects Cult Master Qin. If we build High Heavens Academy there, we have to invite Cult Master Qin to be a chancellor there. With his reputation and the support of true Heaven Palace Master, there will be no more hindrance. After High Heavens Academy is constructed, husband will be able to attack High Heavens and clean up all the lackeys left behind by the celestial heavens. From then on, High Heavens will fall into husband's hands. When High Heavens is annexed into eternal peace, the Emperor will also support you fully. Xu Xinghua's eyes lit up, and he said with a smile, Jing Yang, this idea is good, we will do so then. In that case, Cult Master Qin's computation, canon of supreme molecule, and magnetism divine arts, which path should my High Heavens Academy choose? Jing Yang pondered and said, Dao sect has been constructed for a long time, and they have a very solid foundation. On the other hand, High Heavens Academy is still not yet established, and husband doesn't have the assets to fight with Dao Master. Furthermore, computation canon of supreme molecule should be extremely troublesome, and it's hard to have any result in a few years. Whereas for magnetism divine arts, it's easy to have results. In a few years' time, High Heavens Academy can share the results of magnetism divine arts with Heavenly Saint Academy, borrowing the reputation of Heavenly Saint Academy to be renowned throughout the world. Once we are recognized, the scholars of the world would be willing to seek knowledge in High Heavens Academy. She said with a smile, and when that time comes, Dao Sect's research on computation canon of supreme molecule wouldn't have progressed much. With reputation and manpower, at that time, husband will be able to participate in the research on computation canon of supreme molecule as well. Xu Xinghua came to a decision and said with a smile, with such a wife, what more can a husband ask for? The husband and wife came to a decision, and Jing Yang said, Princess Xiao is a lower first-ranking king in West Earth, the emperor trusts her very much, and furthermore, she's also a hero among the women. West Earth reveres women, and they trust in her as well, thus, she has extremely wide connections. Let me visit Princess Xiao and establish a connection with her, and then we can establish a connection with True Heave Palace. Husband can discuss with Cult Master Qin and establish the connection with Cult Master Qin. In that case, there will be no more obstructions. Xu Xinghua immediately made his decision and told Qin Mu about it. Qin Mu said with a smile, there's only one true Heaven Palace, and it originally belongs to High Heavens. However, over these years, its control over West Earth isn't that strong anymore. As a result, the power of the families in West Earth is rising. It's still fine during times of peace, but once chaos ensues, West Earth is sure to rebel. Brother Shu's idea of establishing High Heavens Academy is very good, and I can go over to take up an honorary title. You still need to visit Sister Xiao later, as her roots in West Earth are deep. Submit the idea to the Emperor with her, and the Emperor will dedicate a sum of money to you so you can establish your High Heavens Academy as soon as possible. Xu Xinghua was delighted. Qin Mu settled all of the trivial stuff in Heavenly Saint Academy, and First Ancestor Human Emperor said, Mua, it's time for us to go. Qin Mu acknowledged and bowed farewell to Granny Sai. He followed after Woodcutter, Deu, and the rest. In front of Bazhu Prefecture, there is a stone statue of a disaster god. Saint Woodcutter said, Does Heavenly King want to go over and take a look? Deu said indifferently, It's good to go and take a look. Qin Mu followed them to Bazhu Prefecture. The stone statue had tunneled out of Bazhu City, and it was extremely tall. It was like a mountain erected in the center of the city. The stone statue had a bird head and a human body. Its wings were half opened, and its eyes were extremely sharp. It was the stone statue of a woman. She was cloaked with feathers with the flame markings of vermilion bird, and even though her body was big, she looked very sweet, fair, and graceful. If her bird head and bird claws couldn't be seen, it would still look quite beautiful overall. The surroundings of the stone statue had already been fenced up by a brick wall, but there were numerous incenses and candles outside the wall. They must be offerings left behind by the foolish commoners. These people don't know this stone statue is a disaster god here to wipe them out. Deur shook her head when she still saw people coming forward to pray and offer incense. The revival of the stone statue is to bring disaster onto eternal peace. These commoners without any cultivation would be the first to die. What's the logic in worshipping the disaster god that's going to descend disaster and kill them? Qin Mu said, "Big sister, this is the difficult part in breaking the god in one's heart and breaking the god in the temple. The more terrifying the god is, the more fearful and respectful the foolish commoners would be, which makes it easier for the gods to receive worships. Imperial Preceptor is trying to reform the popular custom to break the god in the people's hearts. No matter divine arts practitioner or god, they must work for the people and serve the people." The feather of the stone statue had already transformed from stone into true feathers. It was obvious it had absorbed quite an amount of blood and chi from the dead. It had signs of coming back to life. The scales on her legs were also clear, and divine blood could be faintly seen flowing under the skin on her neck. Even though Lu Yunxiu had escaped, the aftermath he had created wasn't superficial. Numerous stone statues were on the brink of awakening in the territory of eternal peace, and the stone statue in Bazhu was just one of them. Even without Lu Yunxiu, the stone statues would revive sooner or later. Even if the people of eternal peace died normally, they would still become sacrificial offerings of the stone statues. Lu Yunxiu had merely sped up the process several times. Deur went to the bottom of the stone statue and said with a soft voice, "So it's a junior sister under South Deity. Junior sister, you can go back to report to South Deity. Tell her your senior sister Deur is in eternal peace, so she can forget about descending this disaster." The bird-head goddess didn't react. Deur gave a slight chuckle and said unhurriedly, "You should be able to hear my voice. Your corporeal body is here, but your primordial spirit is over at South Deity. Whatever I say here, you can hear." A clear bird cry suddenly came from the bird-head goddess, and that cry transformed into the voice of a human. "You are also under South Deity. If you are a senior sister, why are you assisting the outsiders?" "Senior sister, it's not that I'm not giving you any face, but if I left just because of a word from you, where would I put my face? I'm giving you face, that's why I am advising you nicely to leave." Deur smoothed out her hair coming down from her temple, and said with a smile that was yet not a smile, "You must have entered late, right? It seems like you don't know that you have a senior sister like me, and you also don't know my methods." That bird-head goddess suddenly twitched, and the bird head hung down. Its petrified eyes stared at Deur. "May I?" Deur raised her hand and pressed down on emptiness. The bird-head goddess, that was the size of a mountain, suddenly vanished, leaving behind a hole of shattered space where she once stood. From the hole came the piercing cries of a bird. Grasping her hand and pulling back, that bird-head goddess came flying back and appeared in Bazhu City with a boom. The stone statue trembled non-stop, while the shattered space behind the statue quickly pieced back together. Soon, the space was repaired with no flaw to be found. Meanwhile, the flesh and blood of the bird-head goddess were actually growing rapidly, and soon, and it had turned from a stone statue into a living god. That bird-head goddess stood on the original spot and revealed a look of astonishment. She didn't dare to move. She had turned her body into stone, and only then was she able to send herself into eternal peace. However, the primordial spirit still contained too much energy, so she was unable to pass through the world barrier to descend into the world. She could only wait for blood and flesh sacrifices to proceed with the exchange of energy. Only then would her primordial spirit be able to descend and revive her corporeal body. That way, she could descend disaster on the world. Yet, Deur just had to stretch her hands out to press down, and she was able to smack her corporeal body back into her palace that was in another world. Not only was her body returned, but her primordial spirit was also smacked back into her corporeal body. Deu then grasped and pulled back to actually pull her corporeal body with her primordial spirit back into eternal peace, and she was able to revive. That level of magic power, that level of terrifying power was simply on par to her master, South Deity. She had never heard of such a senior sister in the same family. Deu said indifferently, "Junior sister, this is not giving you any face. I have already left you quite some face earlier, don't force me." That bird-head goddess hurriedly took a step back and bowed. As big senior sister commands. She was about to leave, but she was suddenly stunned. Now that she was pulled to the world of eternal peace, there was a world barrier blocking her way to get back to her own world. With her abilities, she couldn't pass through the barrier. Cold sweat broke out on the bird-head goddess' forehead, and she looked at Deu. Deu asked with a smile, "Has junior sister forget something?" The bird-head goddess came to a realization and operated her mind. In the treasury of the capital city, the calamity descending divine weapons covered with layers and layers of seals trembled. The seals shattered into pieces, before one of the vermilion red bottle gourds rose into the sky and blasted out of the treasury, flying to Bazhu. The bird-head goddess raised her hands to catch the vermilion red bottle gourd and asked respectfully, "Senior sister, could I possibly return now?" Deu gave a slight smile and said, "When my junior brother under North Deity came to descend disaster, other than taking away North Deity divine weapon, he also left an arm behind." The bird-head goddess expression changed drastically, and a wing behind her back suddenly raised like a flaming knife to sever her other wing. Fire flowed out from that wing, and the fire was extremely gorgeous. It was formed by countless god writings and feathers. The bird-head goddess endured the pain and placed her wing down. She took a step back and was very respectful. Deu smiled and said, "Junior sister, that's all. Go back and tell your master, tell her senior sister Deu is here. I've not paid my respects to master for 20,000 years, help me kowtow once to her." The bird-head goddess sweat was rolling down from her forehead due to the pain, and she replied with a hoarse voice, "I will definitely meet master." Deu had a slight smile. "Tell her if she comes to descend the disaster personally, I won't hold back. Go." She flicked her finger, and the bird-head goddess suddenly swirled, falling into the depths of the space and vanished. Deu raised her hand and gently stroked the hole in space. Space returned to normal, and no trace could be seen. Qin Mu asked anxiously, "Sister, you made her leave behind a wing before leaving, will it cause trouble in the future?" "She will definitely hate you." Deu smiled. "There will definitely be future trouble, but the hatred of these junior brothers and junior sisters doesn't bother me at all. On the other hand, my masters are the ruthless ones. The main point is I'm too lazy. I'm too lazy to find these stone statues. When my junior brother and junior sister suffered, they will definitely report to North Deity and South Deity. Once they know I'm here, they know they won't be able to descend the disaster. If they force it, their disciples will suffer, therefore, they will summon all of the stone statues back. This saves every disciple from losing an arm too, and this will save me the trouble of looking for the stone statues one by one, having the best of both worlds." Qin Mu picked up the wing of the bird-head goddess, and Deu exclaimed in a hurry, "Don't touch. That's vermilion bird sacred fire." Qin Mu had already picked up the wing, and Deu was astonished. She examined his hands and saw Qin Mu's vital qi transforming into small and complicated fire runes that were like crystals. They blocked the vermilion bird sacred fire, and no matter how strong and fierce the fire was, it couldn't hurt him at all. "This is the Xuandu heavenly fire," Deu said astonishedly. This is the great Tao of heavenly fire you had calculated with computation, canon of supreme molecule. Qin Mu nodded his head and said with a smile, I'm used to being poor my whole life, and since that sister just now should be an expert of God execution stage, her wing should make a decent divine knife, or divine sword, thus I'm keeping it first. He placed the wing into his Dao Tai sack, and sorted out a space to prevent the vermilion bird sacred fire from burning the treasures in the Dao Tai sack. Deu looked over and saw another arm in the Dao Tai sack. It was none other than the arm of the disaster god that was under North Deity. He actually collected it. Little brother is truly thrifty, you know how to live, Deu praised. Woodcutter and first ancestor human emperor had weird expressions. After walking a few days, only then did they came to the capital city. Qin Mu went to the manufacturing factory, on Mud River first, and took down the sword pellet on the dragon Chilean's back. He let the machinery in the factory hammer the sword pellet. Mud River Manufacturing Factory was the biggest manufacturing factory in Eternal Peace, and it was the most suitable to refine a sword pellet that was the size of a small mountain. The other manufacturing factories didn't have such a big space. News then came saying that all the stone statues in Eternal Peace had vanished in the night, while the treasury in the capital city had exploded several times. The divine weapons that were in the treasury also vanished without a trace. A huge calamity vanished just like that. Saint Woodcutter waited for Qin Mu to finish the arrangements and said with a smile, now, we can meet Imperial Preceptor and Emperor Yang Feng. Qin Mu and the rest came to Imperial Preceptor's manor, but he wasn't there. Imperial Preceptor's wife was currently teaching her child, and she hurriedly led her child out to welcome them. My husband has gone to meet the Emperor, and he hasn't been back for quite a few days. Yunjian, come greet Godfather. The child beside her was only 3 to 4 years old, and he called Qin Mu Godfather with a baby voice. Qin Mu's complexion turned red, and he muttered, Sister-in-law, I have yet to marry, so how could I be a godfather? Imperial Preceptor's wife said with a smile, when Yunjian was just born, he already paid his respect to you as your godson, is Cult Master denying it now? Qin Mu gave some thought, and he took out a huge wing from his Dao Tai sack. He plucked a flaming feather from the wing and said, this is the feather of a vermilion bird, it's the feather of a strong practitioner on God execution stage. After all, let Yunjian play with it. I can't give you this wing, as it's too heavy and dangerous, while the feather is very light instead. Wait a moment, let me suppress the vermilion bird sacred fire in this feather. He used the runes from the great Tao of heavenly fire to seal the vermilion bird sacred fire, and only then did he pass the feather of the vermilion bird that was 3 feet long to Jiang Yunjian. The child swung the feather at the stone lion in front of the door, and a beam of fire sliced the stone lion into 2 halves. Imperial Preceptor's wife jumped in shock, and hurriedly grabbed the feather away. I'll let you play with it once you become older. Qin Mu brought Woodcutter, Deu, and First Ancestor to the Imperial Palace. The Empress said, Imperial Preceptor kidnapped His Majesty. He said they were going to Imperial College, but after so many days, he has still yet to send His Majesty back. It's the Crown Prince who is supervising the Empire now and handling the politics. They traveled to Imperial College, and Ji Yulinwan shook his head. His Majesty and Imperial Preceptor aren't here either. They came for a period of time, and gathered scholars for building sun ships and moon ships. They then brought numerous scholars to the manufacturing factories in River Tomb. His Majesty had followed over. Deu said with a smile, this Majesty actually doesn't just sit on his dragon throne, he keeps running around. They then went to River Tomb, and that place was Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's hometown. It had the most manufacturing factories, and there was about 100 of them. Before they could even see Emperor Yang Feng and Imperial Preceptor, they saw numerous huge ships sailing to and fro. They were ferrying huge and intricate parts towards the biggest manufacturing factory in River Tomb. Those parts were likely the parts for sun ships and moon ships. The sun ships and moon ships during founding Emperor era were forged using rocks, and when it came to their time, they were created with metal. It was quite a huge strain on their financial resources. Qin Mu even saw numerous women of West Earth's true heaven palace helping out there, and the young maiden in the lead was someone he was familiar with. It was Xiong Shiyu's daughter, Xiong Chia. He hadn't seen her in years, and Xiong Chia had turned 8 to 9 years old. She was casting spells in the manufacturing factory, and bringing every part to life, allowing the huge parts to float up by themselves and assemble themselves automatically. Brother Cult Master. Xiong Chia was very happy to see him, and was even happier to see the Dragon Chiline. She ran over in a hurry, and threw Qin Mu aside to hug onto the Dragon Chiline's whisker. Qin Mu was avoided by the little girl, and saw her climbing onto the Dragon Chiline's tail. The Dragon Chiline lifted his tail up, and she slid all the way down to his head while giggling non-stop. Every part of the sun ship that Imperial Preceptor and the Emperor are making seems to be coming from the same mold. Every manufacturing factory is in charge of creating a dozen components, which would then be assembled together. Qin Mu was astonished, and he went forward to examine the components. The runes on the parts could be interlocked, and they were extremely intricate. With the spell of West Earth in which all things have spirits, the parts could be assembled quickly. This is a good method to mass-produce sun ships and moon ships. Qin Mu exclaimed endlessly. Saint Woodcutter designed the sun ship and moon ship, but the two heavy artifacts that were created during founding Emperor era were intricate, thus, the ships had varying sizes and the time taken to create one ship was slightly longer. With the manufacturing factories in River Tomb, they could create sun ships and moon ships at a rapid speed. When they found Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor and Emperor Yangfeng, both of them had fallen asleep in the manufacturing factory. The people of Earth Traveler were currently rushing out all kinds of components, and the god race of not even 5 feet moved quickly around each component. You guys are looking for the country bumpkin emperor. Madame Tu stroked her beard, and her voice boomed like thunder. They are lying stiff like corpses over there. Qin Mu, Woodcutter, and the rest looked where she was pointing and saw 2 men sprawled out in a corner of the manufacturing factory. Deafening sounds of forging were ringing out in the factory, yet both of them slept soundly. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor and Emperor Yangfeng were both handsome men, and even though they were middle-aged, they still paid attention to their dressing and appearance. However, both of them had stubbles at that moment, and their clothes were dirty and worn out. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had his feet on Emperor Yanfeng's face, while Emperor Yangfeng hugged Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's leg to sleep soundly. Beside them were also numerous officials from the court and scholars from Imperial College. They were all sprawled out in the corners of the manufacturing factory, and all slept soundly. Deur was silent for a moment, and she suddenly smiled. Now I know why Big Heavenly Teacher has such high hopes for them. Such an emperor, such an imperial preceptor, they are indeed the heads of the reform. Saint Woodcutter said, do I need to wake them up? No need, they are gods, yet they could still be so exhausted, which means that they have truly been working hard for the past few days. Deur said, I have never thought that an emperor would personally tend to such trivial matters, and I have also not thought that the imperial preceptor that's in charge of the reform would attend to everything personally. This imperial preceptor is doing much better than you from back then. Saint Woodcutter said with a smile, I had only fiddled with certain stuff and let other people do it. I'm actually scared of trouble, so I rarely handle things personally. Deur said, you are a saint, you are too far from the people. Saint Woodcutter was silent, and he said astringently, Heavenly King is right. Back then, when the disaster erupted, I led everyone to defend against it, but the army fell like crumbling mountains. It was then I realized I was too far from the people. I was too far from the army. As a heavenly teacher, I had to operate from a strategically advantageous position, but I also had to enter the army, to enter the mortal realm. I was too far away, and I made my moves without careful consideration, resulting in a huge defeat. Come to speak of it, I'm even inferior to Prince Qin Mu. First ancestor human emperor was slightly stunned and gave him a look of disbelief. Saint Woodcutter said, actually, even though I wasn't willing to meet him for the past 20,000 years, I have always admired him. In that period of chaos, even though he had become an army deserter, he had still hardened himself and took up the responsibility when he saw the people suffering. He protected the people, and he fought with his life and used his life to protect them to eternal peace. If there were no Prince Qin Mu, there would be no eternal peace in the future. First ancestor human emperor's eyes became teary, and he turned his head over to wipe his eyes secretly. Saint Woodcutter saw everything and said, but he had still fallen into depression and blamed himself. He could never walk out of his shadow of being an army deserter, which was why I looked down on him. Now that he has walked out, I'm very gratified. Actually, he has always done better than me in the disaster. Deus smiled and said, there's no need to alarm them. Let's go. They walked out of the manufacturing factory. After fooling around for a moment, Xiongqia got back to work and finally finished assembling a huge ship. The little girl took out the white tiger bead and gently tapped on the bead. The huge land ship gradually stood up, and the ground trembled non-stop. In the manufacturing factory, Emperor Yangfeng and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor were jolted awake. They ran out in a hurry, and when they saw the huge ship coming to life, they hugged each other in laughter and tears. Qin Mu summoned the dragon Qilin, and left into the distance with Deu and the rest. Emperor Yangfeng saw the dragon Qilin from far away, and he said bewilderedly, when has Minister Qin came? Why has he left? How dare he not greet us when both me and Imperial Preceptor are here? Someone, fetch me my brush and ink. Today is a joyous day, and I'm feeling energized and refreshed. I'm going to draw a big tally for him. Woodcutter quickly left, and he said, I'm still trying to find the farmer and contact other people. I can't stay here. Angler, let's go. Elder Angler left with him. First ancestor human emperor also bade farewell. I have things to do. After saying so, he left in a hurry. Qin Mu blinked his eyes and saw them off. He thought to himself, it's normal if teacher Woodcutter is busy, but why is first ancestor busy as well? What is he busy with? Deu looked at him and said with a smile, brother, are you busy as well? If you aren't, why don't you follow me to find Heavenly King Tian Shu and help King Yama rebuild Fengdu? We can then take a visit to Goddess of Heavenly Yin, and after paying our respects to her, Big Sister shall bring you around to pay your respects to Heaven Duke, Earth Count, and the other experts on Emperor's throne. It's hugely beneficial to you. Qin Mu's was pretty moved. If he was able to follow a strong practitioner on Emperor's throne like Deu to pay his respects to the natural-born sacred gods around, his horizons would definitely expand. I still have a sword pellet to refine. Qin Mu hesitated and said, Big Sister, why don't you meet Goddess of Heavenly Yin first? After I finish refining my sword pellet, I'll go to Fengdu and find you. Deu said with a smile, that will do as well. I shall go find this Tian Shu, he's timid, so I don't know where he's hiding now. After you finish refining your sword, if you can't find us in Fengdu, go to Heavenly Yin World. Qin Mu nodded his head, and Deu also floated away. Fatty Dragon, let us go to the manufacturing factory on Mud River. Qin Mu jumped onto the dragon Qilin's head, and the dragon Qilin immediately brought him over. In the manufacturing factory, the 100 yards sword pellet had become only 30 yards, and even the giant machines couldn't refine it any smaller. Qin Mu took out the vermilion bird's wing and used vermilion bird sacred fire to refine the sword pellet. His primordial spirit went up personally to hammer the sword pellet, and he used the power of vermilion bird's sacred fire to imprint his own runes into the sword pellet. After a dozen days, the sword pellet had become 3 feet big, but it still couldn't flow like water. Qin Mu kept the wing and used heavenly fire divine art to refine the sword pellet. Another half a month passed by, and the sword pellet became 1 foot. After trying to execute it, operating vital qi was very strenuous, and he had to exhaust quite a lot of energy to transform the sword pellet into flying swords to slay an enemy. I cultivate both God and devil together, so maybe I still need to use devil fire to refine. Qin Mu's heart stirred. What will happen if I use my cultivation on the devil path to execute heavenly fire? He blinked his eyes and immediately got to experimenting. He suddenly remembered something and moved the sword pellet out of the factory and chose a desolate place before taking out the prism of heavenly fire. His divine treasures reversed and instantly, devil qi filled his body. Qin Mu executed the prism of heavenly fire and activated the power of the heavenly fire. Outside the factory, the dragon Qilin was sleeping soundly when he suddenly heard an astonishing explosion. He hurriedly raised his head and barely opened an eye. He saw black fire pouring into the sky, dozens of miles away. The dragon Qilin yawned and stood up shakily. He walked 2 steps forward before collapsing back down to sleep. He mumbled, "Cult master shouldn't die so easily." This video will end here.